Imagine you're scrolling through a streaming service late at night and come across a vintage clip of a beaming child star, sparkling eyes, pigtails, a quick smile, and realize as you watch that that kid isn't just another youthful hopeful. It's Jodie Foster. Yes, that Jodie Foster, one of the most intriguing figures in Hollywood history, whose career spans from toddler and Coppertone commercials to Oscar-winning icon, a director of uncompromising vision, and, despite waves of media frenzy, a private, determined force who survived tumultuous moments that could easily fill a novel. Her life story reads like a cinematic script brimming with triumph, heartbreak, perseverance, and, in certain twists, the kind of human drama that puts tabloid headlines to shame. November 19th, 1962, in the sprawling city of Los Angeles, Alicia Christian Foster is born, the youngest child of Evelyn Brandy Foster and Lucius Fisher Foster III. On paper, that might sound typical. She's from a well-to-do background. Her father was a businessman, and her lineage even connects back to John Alden of Mayflower fame. But the reality was complicated. Her parents' marriage had already unraveled before she arrived, so Jodie never had a father-daughter bond to speak of. Instead, she grew up in an unconventional home with a determined mother who shared living space and parenting responsibilities with her female partner in L.A. This backdrop, an all-female household in the 1960s, wasn't exactly mainstream. But if you want to talk about forging a self-reliant spirit, that environment might have been the first building block. She's also of Irish, English, and German heritage, a multicultural tapestry that might explain some of her fierce intelligence and methodical approach. Her siblings, Lucinda Constance, nicknamed Connie, and Lucius, nicknamed Buddy, all grew up together under Brandy's watch. Jodie was originally christened Alicia, but from an early age the family called her Jodie, and it stuck. By the time she was 3 years old, little Jodie was reading books. Yes, you read that right, 3. The hustle and bustle of the Foster household got even more interesting when, as the story goes, Brandy took Buddy to a casting call for a Coppertone commercial. Jodie was just tagging along, but the casting agent spotted this bright, curious toddler, thought she was adorable, and cast her on the spot. That's how a future Oscar-winning phenomenon got her foot in the door, totally by accident. Now let's remind ourselves, Jodie was a toddler. A normal toddler might wander around set, enthralled by bright lights and new faces. But the difference was that Jodie approached everything, cameras, scripts, direction, with an unnerving focus. By age 6, she was starring in more commercials and supporting roles, effectively becoming the family's breadwinner alongside her brother Buddy. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, she popped up in a barrage of TV shows: Gunsmoke, The Doris Day Show, My Three Sons, Bonanza, Kung Fu, you name it. She was probably there in a small but memorable part. Meanwhile, she juggled a rigorous education. She enrolled at the Lycée Français de Los Angeles, a French-language prep school. If you want a testament to her intellect, she not only became fluent in French, she also now dubs herself in French versions of her English-language films, and has even acted in French films. Who else in Hollywood can claim that level of comfort, crossing linguistic boundaries? These early years laid the foundation for her remarkable persona, an on-screen performer with seriousness beyond her years, and off-camera, a scholar with a voracious appetite for knowledge. But let's not skip over the fact that child stars rarely navigate show business unscathed. Despite loving the process of acting, Jodie was still a kid with an unconventional home life. She was also the family's financial backbone, and that's a monstrous weight for a child. Yet by all accounts, she handled it with grit and composure that could put many adults to shame. Her big break into film came mostly via Disney. She popped into small roles like Menace on the Mountain, 1970, then scored her feature film debut with Napoleon and Samantha, 1972. She was so young that the production's biggest fiasco, getting accidentally grabbed by a lion, left scars on her back. What child experiences that and soldier on with little complaint? Jodie Foster, that's who. She also took smaller parts in Kansas City Bomber, One Little Indian, a Mark Twain adaptation, Tom Sawyer, and even ended up in Martin Scorsese's Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, 1974, in a small but telling role. If you look at her earliest work, it's a kaleidoscope of comedic bits, Disney whimsy, and cameo appearances. But those mild beginnings gave her the fundamental tools she'd use later, especially once she snagged the role that changed everything, playing a child prostitute in Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, 1976. Pause for a second. Imagine being 12 years old and stepping into the chaotic swirl of 1970s New York City, filming a gritty movie with Robert De Niro, playing perhaps one of the most controversial roles ever assigned to a minor. It's not exactly the standard Disney route, is it? Naturally, the grown-ups around her had concerns. Legally, Jodie had to pass a psychiatric assessment to be deemed stable enough to handle that material. Plus, the film's producers brought in a social worker, and for any scenes with sexual undertones, her older sister Connie acted as a stand-in. This role, this wide-eyed but jaded character named Iris, was the total opposite of the typical child star. She wore hot pants, roamed sketchy New York streets, and exuded a layered sense of despair and innocence that even many adult actors struggle to convey. Taxi Driver was a massive moment for American cinema. It took home the Palme d'Or at Cannes and became an instant classic. Critics raved about De Niro, about Scorsese's direction, about the film's brutal reflection of society, and they marveled at Jodie Foster, who somehow pulled off this complicated, mature performance at such a tender age. The Academy recognized her with a Best Supporting Actress nomination. Think about that. A 12-year-old, though 13 by the time of the ceremony, with an Oscar nod, delivering lines that no child that age typically utters. If that's not an inflection point, what is? After that, the offers poured in. Another major film from 1976, Bugsy Malone, saw her playing a speakeasy star in Alan Parker's whimsical Prohibition-era gangster parody starring only kids. Then came smaller roles like The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane, where she played a mysterious, near-psychopathic child living alone in a small town. She wasn't content being the comedic relief or the cute sidekick. She took roles that tested her emotional capacity. But success is never pure. With a huge breakout comes intense scrutiny. At the same time that critics lauded her as a teen talent, some viewers and commentators were uncomfortable with how adult those roles felt, especially Taxi Driver. There was even a partially nude photo shoot taken by photographer Emilio Lari. Stories differ on exactly how old she was. Some say 13, others say 16. But either way, for modern audiences, it's chilling to realize that her mother arranged for those photos, albeit supposedly trying to position Jodie as a more adult actress. Despite the controversies, Jodie soared academically. She continued at the Lycée Français de Los Angeles, graduating as valedictorian for the school's French division. By 1980, she was off to Yale University, majoring in African American literature, an unusual choice for a Hollywood star. Then again, Jodie Foster was never usual. She wrote a thesis on Toni Morrison, studied under Henry Louis Gates Jr., graduated magna cum laude in 1985, and even returned to Yale in 1993 to give the commencement address. That's how intellectually driven she was, even at the peak of her new stardom. She tested the waters of stepping away from acting to become a full-time student, though she never completely left the business. She used her summer vacations to film. Yet the 1980s weren't all smooth academic sailing. She continued taking occasional roles. Fox's 1980 as a rebellious teen, Carney 1980 about carnival workers, O'Hara's Wife 1982, The Hotel New Hampshire 1984, and so on. Most of these films never became blockbusters or critical darlings. She seemed stuck between child stardom and adult acceptance. Hollywood can be cruel, discarding many teen actors once they lose that fresh-faced appeal. There was a period where Jodie worried she might be done in the industry. She even considered graduate school as her next step. And then came The Accused, 1988. It's almost comedic that Jodie had to audition multiple times for the role, especially given her early track record. But the film's producers were wary of her, partly because her prior adult roles hadn't raked in cash, and partly because it's a harrowingly intense story, a gang rape survivor fighting for justice in the face of victim blaming. The film was based on a real-life case and demanded raw vulnerability. Some actresses turned it down either because it felt too risky or they didn't want to film that brutal assault scene. Jodie took the leap. The filming was punishing. 5 days just to shoot the rape scene. By the end, Jodie believed she'd done a terrible job, perhaps sabotaging her career. Instead, critics were stunned by her ferocious performance. She walked away with her first Academy Award for Best Actress, as well as the Golden Globe and even more nominations. Overnight, she was no longer the child star from Taxi Driver or the teen from a handful of B movies. She was a legitimate adult powerhouse. That newfound legitimacy catapulted her to the role that arguably sealed her legend, Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs, 1991. The story's a thriller of the highest order, with Hannibal Lecter, Anthony Hopkins, menacing the screen as a brilliant serial killer, while Clarice, an FBI trainee, tries to track down a different murderer altogether. Jodie Starling was more than just a damsel. She was a fully realized protagonist in a genre often dominated by male leads. Foster had read the novel years earlier, and she'd even tried to buy the rights, so she was in from day one. But the director, Jonathan Demme, wasn't sure about casting her, ironically. Yet once she was on board, they formed a synergy that produced cinematic gold. The Silence of the Lambs was not just a box office triumph. It swept the Oscars, winning Best Picture, Director, Actor, Actress, and Adapted Screenplay. That's extremely rare, and it put Jodie Foster in a select group of two-time Academy Award finishers. As with Taxi Driver and The Accused, though, the role came with controversies. Critics claimed the film was misogynistic, focusing on brutal violence toward women, and some in the LGBTQ+ community bristled at how the killer Buffalo Bill was depicted, seeing the character as a negative portrayal of trans individuals. Some singled out Jodie, presuming her to be a lesbian, as though she were personally responsible for these plot elements. The noise was deafening, but the accolades overcame the criticisms. The Silence of the Lambs is widely revered as a modern classic, and it's been enshrined in the National Film Registry, a testament to its cultural significance. At that point, Jodie could have taken a victory lap and done no more, but that's not her style. Instead, she launched into her directorial debut, Little Man Tate, 1991, where she also co-starred as the mother of a child prodigy. She found the script in Orion Pictures' so-called slush pile, fell in love with the story of otherness and giftedness, themes that resonated with her. While critics had mixed reactions, it did respectable box office and established her as a director with potential. She followed that with roles in Summersby, 1993, opposite Richard Gere, and Maverick, 1994, opposite Mel Gibson. Both were commercial successes. Yet if you track her filmography, you see her chasing roles that let her explore nuance, introspection, and resilience. She then formed Egg Pictures, a production company designed to champion stories that might not otherwise get made. Out of that came Nell, 1994, in which she starred as a backwoods woman with a private language. It was borderline experimental, but the raw vulnerability of her portrayal once again wowed critics, earning her an Oscar nomination. Although the film itself got mixed reviews, it performed well at the box office. She didn't let that momentum go to waste. She jumped right in to direct Home for the Holidays, 1995, a black comedy about a dysfunctional Thanksgiving. It wasn't a big moneymaker, but it demonstrated that her behind-the-camera curiosity was more than a one-off. Flash forward to 1997, and we see another big success, Contact, based on Carl Sagan's novel directed by Robert Zemeckis. She starred as an astronomer searching for extraterrestrial life. The film combined a strong sense of intellectual wonder with a blockbuster scale, pulling in substantial box office numbers and earning Jodie a Saturn Award for her performance. She was also nominated for a Golden Globe. By now, the shape of her career looked unstoppable. Child star, to serious actress, to two-time Oscar winner, to credible director and producer. In 1998, she co-produced The Baby Dance for Showtime, and then produced more projects with Egg Pictures. Though her star soared, she wasn't immune to misfires. Anne and the King, 1999, co-starring Chow Yun-fat, was a lavish historical epic about Anna Leonowens in 19th century Siam. It did well enough financially, but critics were unimpressed, and the Thai government banned it for historical inaccuracies. Some described it as a misstep for Foster, complaining that she was wasted on a role that required her to do little more than show up as a plucky foreigner. But after so many high points, a single disappointment was hardly enough to derail her. She pressed on, filming David Fincher's Panic Room, 2002, after Nicole Kidman had to back out. Shot in a claustrophobic set, the movie was a thriller that put Jodie front and center as a mother protecting her child from intruders. Despite behind-the-scenes turmoil, she had only a week to prepare. Panic Room was a big box office success, reaffirming her ability to draw audiences into an intense cinematic experience. Over the next few years, she appeared in a series of commercial thrillers: Flight Plan, 2005, Inside Man, 2006, and The Brave One, 2007. Each of these, in its own way, circled back to Jodie's recurring theme of a woman forced into extreme circumstances, tested to the limit. Flight Plan had her searching for a vanished daughter in midair. Inside Man matched her wits with Denzel Washington and Clive Owen. The Brave One was reminiscent of Taxi Driver's vigilante spirit, now from a female perspective. Though not all were critical darlings, they collectively earned enough at the box office to sustain her star power. The Brave One even garnered her a Golden Globe nod. Then, Nim's Island, 2008, took her into a more family-friendly comedic role, though critics mostly panned it. In some ways, it felt like a throwback to her Disney days, a whimsical romp that made decent money but wasn't a masterpiece. By the 2010s, Jodie pivoted more to directing, ironically, just as many of her generation's fellow stars began stepping away from the camera. In 2011, she tackled a particularly tough project, The Beaver, starring her longtime friend and maverick co-star Mel Gibson, who had become mired in scandal due to alleged domestic violence and a string of offensive rants. The Beaver told the story of a depressed man adopting a beaver hand puppet to communicate with the world. The concept was odd, the behind-the-scenes turmoil intense, and critics gave it a lukewarm reception at best. Commercially, it flopped, but Jodie stood by Gibson, defending the film's emotional honesty, even though many viewers stayed away, put off by the star's controversies. That same year, she co-starred with John C. Reilly, Kate Winslet, and Christoph Waltz in Roman Polanski's Carnage, a black comedy about two sets of parents trying and failing to handle a playground incident gracefully. Critics appreciated its dark humor, and Jodie earned another Golden Globe nomination. Despite the projects that didn't fully catch fire, her credibility in the industry remained unassailable. Then came Elysium, 2013, a futuristic sci-fi commentary on class inequality, directed by Neil Blomkamp. She took a villainous turn as Secretary of Defense Delacour, a chilling presence overshadowing Matt Damon's proletarian hero. Though the film scored mixed reviews, it banked decent numbers at the box office and placed Jodie in a rare, big-budget, effects-driven summer spectacle. Her directorial efforts continued, though mostly on television. Episodes of Orange is the New Black and House of Cards, which garnered her multiple nominations from the Directors Guild of America and an Emmy nod. She also directed an episode, Archangel, for the anthology series Black Mirror. The critical acclaim for her TV direction suggests that the shift to streaming and prestige television opened new doors for her behind the camera, ironically letting her explore themes of identity, fear, and technology, threads woven throughout her entire career. In 2016, she directed Money Monster, a hostage drama about high-stakes finance starring George Clooney and Julia Roberts. It premiered at Cannes, receiving a mixture of praise and shrugs. Commercially, it did modest business. Nonetheless, it reaffirmed her standing as a serious director. Even if not every film was a smash, the industry recognized her skill at telling stories that keep audiences pinned to their seats. For years, tabloids and some critics demanded she declare herself. In 1991, The Silence of the Lambs got hammered by outraged voices who felt it was transphobic or homophobic. People aimed venom at Jodie, labeling her closeted, accusing her of complicity. For a young woman who'd essentially grown up on camera, the invasion was suffocating. And maybe it's tragic that when she finally did speak about her personal life at the 70th Golden Globe Awards, addressing that well-known but never publicly stated fact that she's gay, her statement was overshadowed by debates over whether she'd use the word lesbian or gay. The nuance of her speech was lost on many, who wanted either a flamboyant coming out or some sensational confession. Instead, she offered a measured, private reflection, which is exactly on brand for her. That's how she's navigated everything, with controlled self-disclosure, rarely indulging the tabloids. She was raised by a single mother who had a female partner, effectively giving Jodie a blueprint for same-sex family life decades before it was widely accepted. She later partnered with Sidney Bernard for about 15 years, raising two sons, Charlie and Kit. After that relationship ended, she married actress and photographer Alexandra Hedison in 2014. But the press used to take potshots, suspiciously tracking father figures for her children, prying into her relationships. Some consider the child's stardom itself a kind of tragedy, pointing to the partial lion mauling on set, or the questionable photo shoots, or the intense working schedule that robbed her of a typical childhood. Others see the tragedy in that she's had to watch her most vulnerable moments, like being forcibly linked to a would-be presidential assassin, become public fodder. After all, she's managed to remain relevant and respected in an industry that typically discards women once they reach a certain age or step away for personal reasons. She has 2 Oscars, multiple Golden Globes, BAFTAs, a distinguished directing career, an imprint on pop culture few can rival, an impeccable intellect, and even a cameo in astronomy. There's an asteroid named 17744 Jodie Foster. She didn't burn out like so many child stars, nor did she succumb to the destructive cycles that so often plague Hollywood veterans. Instead, she's consistently challenging herself, shifting gears from performance to direction, from big studio thrillers to smaller indie flicks, all while fiercely maintaining her personal boundaries. In more recent years, we've seen glimpses of a lighter Jodie. In interviews, she jokes about the busyness of her youth, about how she learned to speak French on set while filming a commercial, and about the comedic mismatch that was Nim's Island. She's also become an advocate for LGBTQ+ visibility, though in her own measured style, focusing more on universal messages of acceptance rather than personal confessions. At film festivals, she's revered as a veteran whose experiences can guide the next generation of actors and directors, particularly women who want to stake a claim behind the camera. She's become something of a role model for artistry over tabloid sensationalism. If you're wondering about her directorial career's next steps, she's teased a longing to revisit certain passion projects like Flora Plum, a 1930s circus drama that's been languishing in development limbo for years. She's also directed episodes for shows like Black Mirror and Tales from the Loop. Maybe we'll see another feature from her soon. There have been rumors swirling. Meanwhile, her acting is by no means finished. She showed up in Hotel Artemis 2018, playing a rule-breaking nurse in a near-future criminal underworld, receiving praise even as the film itself garnered lukewarm critiques. She starred in The Mauritanian 2021 and scored a Golden Globe for her portrayal of a lawyer defending a Guantanamo detainee. She's slated to appear in more projects, including new Netflix content, so her creative well is far from dry. Jodie Foster's journey through the entertainment world has been as complex and fascinating as the characters she's portrayed. Though she has stepped back from the limelight, her influence on film and storytelling remains undeniable. With 2 Oscars, 2 Golden Globes, and a legacy of powerful roles, she continues to inspire both fans and future filmmakers. What's your favorite Jodie Foster performance? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.